If anyone would do it, it'd be 50.
All right. Okay, it is 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for Thursday, February 27th. We have 2 items on the agenda today. The first one is our monthly presentation of the public transit report, which for those that might be joining us for the first time, every month we get an update from city staff on public transit ridership, the budget, projects that are going on, grants, anything related to public transit. And we're able to ask questions and have a discussion about that. So if you have any questions or comments about the public transit system in Norman, contact your council member or me, and we'll make sure to bring those up in this committee. So we'll go ahead and get started with item number 1, which is the public transit report. And we have Taylor here from city staff.
Thank you, Chair and Council. A few updates, and then we'll get to the numbers. Following your approval on January 28th of a contract amendment with Embark, we started security services at the Transit Center February 1st. Initially, we started the latest hours that we operate, so 2 to 10 Monday through Friday, and then 11 to 7 on Saturdays. And we've slightly adjusted that to be noon to 8 Monday through Friday instead, just to coincide more with the busier times there. Seems to be going pretty well. I haven't heard of any major incident or anything between security personnel or the passengers, but I think that was a good addition just to kind of monitor the area more than it was, get some more eyes out there. So as you all get feedback, if you do, please let me know if there's anything that you guys hear as well. Moving to vehicles, we should get, we've had this on the agenda for a while, but we have 6 CNG cutaways on order to replace 6 paratransit vehicles. Now it was going to be January, it's now March, so we're hoping to get those in the upcoming month and get the last few of the fleet out of retired that need to be retired from OU. We'll still have 3 buses remaining, but we're working on procurement options for those. And then I'll just mention we went to you all in January on the 14th at a conference to talk about the Central Oklahoma Long Range Transit Plan. Should be seeing more information about that again in the next couple of months. We'll probably come back to council with some more with another update before it comes back to the different boards and committees throughout the metro for approval. Had a meeting today about it on a staff level. It's going along pretty well. Again, just a high level overview of how the local transit systems could maybe coordinate better with the high capacity improvements that are planned between RTA and Embark and other things. So, and then moving on to the numbers for ridership, we're still up from last year and 40,182 in January compared to 30,295 last January, so about a 10,000 increase. Still on a clip to just be at 500,000 total ridership between fixed route and paratransit, or a little bit less, but that'll be up from about 403,000 last year. So a pretty good increase. And we're hoping it's because of the route changes we made a few years ago, and we know that this probably can't stay at the same clip it's been at, but we're hoping that we can continue to make increases over the next couple of years as funding becomes available with frequency and maybe adding routes. For Norman On Demand, which is the last page in your packet, we had 3,272 rides in January. That's just a slight decrease from December 2024, which was 100 more, but it's still an 800 increase over last January. So that mode of transit is also increasing year over year and continues to serve the riders in those times that the fixed route doesn't operate and provides that late night service and then Sunday day service. So happy to go into any of the other numbers or anything else in the memo that you guys might have questions or comments on, otherwise I'll pass it to the next.
And what was the increase percent for on demand?
For on demand, last January to this January, it was a 24% increase.
Okay. Okay, let me see. So 29% overall increase for the bus and
Pair.
total together
Mhm.
over this year, which I think is notable. And I think is an important point for us all to remember when that comes up in conversations about value of public transit in Norman, or if people are riding it. Yes, a lot of people are riding it, and it's increasing in ridership. All of the routes have show an increase in ridership except for the Social Security route.
Which that's such a small sample size, it's really hard to, I wouldn't compare it.
Yeah, 38, 55, 38 riders this year, 55 last year, so
That's the one that goes to Oklahoma City.
in January.
It just goes to the Moore Social Security
Moore,
office and
sorry.
back twice a week, so it's very limited service, provides a very specific route, yeah.
But yeah, like Rock Creek, 62%, and all of them being 23%, 36, 30, 32, 62 on the, that's just Monday through Friday, and then Saturday service up 21%, 12%, 8%, 56%, and 76% for the Rock Creek route, which services University of North Park and the hospital. So I don't know if everybody's riding the bus to the YFAC because there's no parking. Not enough parking, I should say. But just wanted to point those things out. Councilmember Grant?
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the added mobility plus. And it said, plus passengers with added mobility totaled 335 for January 2025 with a 5.35 increase from January 2024. I know that the buses have ADA accessibility, but people are still choosing this added mobility plus. Is that like the one that you have to call in advance for?
No, that's just tracking passengers that had a mobility device like a scooter or something. That's just showing that there's.
Catching the regular bus.
You're looking at page 4 on the added mobility plus, the purple
It's
graph?
Yes.
Yeah, that's just showing you the passengers that may have brought a mobility device with them, like a scooter. It's just, unless, if they're not ambulatory, then they're bringing a added mobility with them. It's just another metric to show that we're serving folks that
Yeah, I
don't
was
have
a
that.
little curious about like.
But there's no different service, it's just the same plus service.
Right. What you were noticing in trends with folks that have mobility issues.
Yeah, so there's a similar graph on page 3 for fixed route, added mobility fixed route. And with that one, we're showing an increase of about 16% for people that brought added mobility, such as bikes and wheelchairs. Of that, 1,143, 764 were bikes. So I think.
So there's an increase in people who are riding their bike and catching the bus as well.
Right, and people that are using mobility devices and catching the fixed route bus. So
It's kind of what we're hoping to see though. Right?
yeah, we want people operationally to ride fixed route because it's
Right.
gonna operate no matter what, and it'll just be a efficiency and cost savings to the operations if they ride fixed route. Now, some people, they can't get to a bus stop, they can't use it, but we hope that the fixed route service becomes more and more user-friendly for people that have mobility devices to use it. That was the whole intent of the ADA, is to eventually, bus routes and fixed route services would comply and become available, more available for people with mobility devices. But unfortunately, it's very cumbersome to get all that infrastructure-wise, and then you don't go everywhere with fixed routes. So
That we wouldn't need a plus system.
I think that was always the intent, but it's going to be hard to ever get rid of it, I think, or take it away.
Plus system is very expensive to operate.
Yeah, just because an important metric I should hit on more often is the ridership per service hour. So and that's shown in On page 2 for fixed route weekday and Saturday, it's the last sentence of each of those paragraphs. So for example, the average ridership per service hour for fixed route weekday is 18.12 or 18. And then the average ridership per service hour for plus weekday is 1.27. So average of 1. So we can serve more people on the big bus per service hour, and it's, a lot cheaper per passenger.
And then when this isn't running, this is when paratransit or on demand, because they have 2 ADA vehicles on that.
Yeah, Norman On Demand has, I think 3 ADA vehicles now out of the 7, so, and always has at least one operating at all times for those people that request the weight
Yeah.
vehicle.
Because that's usually what I get pinged about on social media is availability. I've also told one particular person you can catch the regular buses. They really are like ADA compliant. So.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, we started implementing some of you may have been around when we started putting in I'm losing the name of the wheelchair securement device that you push the button. I think we call it the Quantum. Instead of having the hooks that latch on there and the driver has to get out and do that, it's now very automated, much quicker, and hopefully that is attracting more riders with mobility devices. It's a little more independent for them to get on and off the bus.
Which I assume is why they're taking it more.
Yeah, and maybe the route changes serve more destinations and origins that they're able to access as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And with the paratransit Embark Plus, we cover the entire city limits, but we're not required to.
Right, only the 3/4 of a mile around a fixed route line is what's required.
So we cover all 200 square miles of city limits.
Yep.
But in your within 3/4 of a mile. Of
Yeah,
a
as
fixed
the
route.
crow flies, yeah.
So
that's the zone 1. If you see a map of the paratransit service, that's the zone 1, and then zone 2 is everything else. Yeah.
it would really only have to go to 36th Avenue or something. But we take it all the way.
Right.
And let me see. With the on-demand, I think, we've got some budget decisions to make here. The council will have over the next few months, and we've had suggestions about what would it look like if we were to raise the rate for that from $2 to $5 or whatnot. That was one of the suggestions from Dan Munson on Tuesday. And I had thought about $5 too, but what would it look like if we did raise it, and accounting for how that might impact or lower ridership if we did change it to $5? Because it is looking like it's going to be a hard program to sustain for the city budget currently. Given the cost and with the transit tax covering the fixed route system and the plus system and everything else, and kind of the subsidy to transit being mostly the on-demand, I think that's something the council's going to have to be really weighing heavily in this upcoming budget, and whether we can continue doing it or not. But I would like to, especially if it's continuing to see an increase, and right now it being our only public transit option on Sundays and late night, which I think is a plus that I like to brag about. So I think we'd like to see it keep going, but it may be difficult. So maybe if we're able to start working on, if you haven't already, what some scenarios could be for increasing the rate. If OU is up for increasing their contribution, like how many students are riding it, what does that cost? Is the 100,000 covering that type of stuff?
Right.
So that could help us make a more sound decision when the time comes.
Yeah, I'll say the rate for transit or the fare never really puts a dent in the budget as we talked about before with fixed route. But we can certainly look at what changing that fare would do to ridership. They have elasticity models that show if you raise it by so many percent, you'll lose this many riders. Just a good industry guess.
And maybe it's on the if it's all the way across to the other side of town, then it's 5 or more, or If
Sure.
it's just down the street, then
Yeah,
it's.
and we've talked about you could do just a standard flat rate increase. You could do the rate by mileage. There's different models out there. So and I would say it would be less at creating more revenue, and it might more so drive down demand,
Right.
Which
So-
could make the service a little bit more efficient and not as costly if you don't
There's
have
a
as much
formula, I
demand.
guess, that accounts for that.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
If you raise
just-
it this many, might raise
exactly.
this, so. I think Councilmember
I-
Peacock.
If we're gonna raise the fare, I think I'd just be interested in basically whatever we had to do to recoup our costs, fuel costs, driver costs, that kind of things like that. So whatever that number might be, I know it's hard to quantify, but
Yeah,
I'd hate to charge $5 when we only really need to charge $1.50 or whatever it is. I don't think we need to, as you alluded to, it doesn't really impact the budget all that much. So I'd hate to look at it as a revenue source, but offsetting some of our expenses might be
sure.
wise.
And I'll say on the budget side, we're obviously still in the budget season, but it could, if the revenues pan out, you may in your transit fund have enough to cover what we're operating fixed route, paratransit, and Norman on demand. And the question may be more of what do you want those transit dollars to go towards in terms of service? Because those dollars between the sales tax and the grant can only go towards transit related expenses at the end of the day. So my guess, which is not Anthony's guess or Clint or anybody else's, is I think we'll be okay and not need a subsidy next year. So that's up to city leadership to look
That
at
would be
more.
ideal.
So in that realm, you may have a question of service if you want to look at that versus maybe cost savings.
We'll definitely be looking at ways to address the issues with the
Yeah.
general fund.
Right.
So if transit tax is able to cover transit needs, including on demand, that would be it.
That's always our hope.
Awesome.
That's been our hope since we started. right?
Exactly, yeah. So,
And so thankfully Anthony's not here to hit me over the head. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's my hope because maybe next year we'll be okay.
okay, Councilmember Grant?
Other question is future of this program, if RTA passes, would it fit into the larger plans or?
Of Norman on demand specifically?
Mhm,
Yeah. So I think as an industry, I think transit is looking more at on-demand zones and how they can better serve outside of traditional commute times and less dense areas, kind of what we talked about a couple of years ago when we set up Norman on demand. So the Central Oklahoma Long Range Transit Plan, the meeting we had today, they're actually looking at proposing, or at least giving the idea out there of more on-demand zones throughout the metro, right, to serve those areas. That doesn't make sense for fixed route. So I think it's another tool in the toolbox that can be used, and I don't think it's a mode that's going away as an industry.
Be covered, because ultimately, if this passes, then the dedicated sales tax rolls into that, and then I guess it's whatever we approve as voters that's outlined in the RTA language on the ballot.
Yeah, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves of what the RTA is going to propose.
But I'm just kind of curious, like how the funding would work if that passes and how we're paying for things.
Yeah, so over the next year, if the timeline goes the way that we're hearing it with the sales tax vote, we'll learn more about what the RTA wants to go to the cities and ask for them to put on the ballot, right? But the question is, will the sales tax cover the improvements to the rail only, to do the commuter rail part and maybe the BRT out to Tinker and things like that? Will it cover local service? And if so, you'd hope it at least cover the service that's being provided, if not improve service, which we've talked about. Improving local bus service to the RTA stops is paramount to its success. So I think we need to see what they got a lot of number crunching left to do and
But
a lot of polling to
on-
do.
Demand service could, be a part of the
Mhm.
future. through
Yeah,
that
I
as
think
well.
all of us in the metro are thinking about on-demand services, including Embark, because in Maps 4 they have money for 2 on-demand zones, I believe. That's kind of later on in Maps 4, but they're looking at that as well.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
It's ideal for first last mile connections, especially for those station stops.
The intent for sure of the RTA, at least before, has been that it's not just the train, that it's a metropolitan transit system, and that the interconnected bus transit or on demand, whatever it may be, was vital towards the train being a useful form of transit. If the stops didn't connect to anything, and there was no
Or
other.
that feeder service into
Yeah,
it.
and so I know with our tax, we tried to account for if a regional tax is passed that covers our current service and this expanded service, then our tax could either go away so that it's less of an increase in Norman than it would be in Edmond or OKC, or we just goes into it, I guess. So that it could expire if there was another transit tax passed that covered everything, and so that the tax increase may be less in Norman than other places.
Good selling point for Norman.
And so, but I mean, we'll have to continue having our own service for Norman. Will ideally Norman, Moore, OKC, Edmond, everywhere's got the same. It's not everybody's got their own system going, and so that was a big driver about why we went with Embark since they were already operating OKC's system. It made sense to have them operate ours too in preparation for that future metro system. Okay. Anything else regarding transit? Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, Taylor. All right, the next item on the agenda is a discussion regarding State Highway 9 safety update and James Garner Boulevard at Acres. And we've got David and Scott here from Public Works.
David's gonna do all the heavy lifting today because he's done all the data research and understands it way better than I do.
All right.
But this was something that was requested by this committee, and David's done some good work pulling that together, and I'd be interested to share it and get your thoughts. And then we pulled together some quick numbers on James Garner. It's still very early, as I think as David would agree, and I think we're still seeing changes in those numbers, but it's encouraging with what we're seeing. And that I'll turn it over to David.
Thank you.
All right. So a little bit about what we'll talk about today. Being as State Highway 9 is ODOT's route, we need to try to understand their position on highway safety and what they're willing to do and what they're really kind of not willing to do with regard to safety on Highway 9. I gathered collision reports from State Highway 9 at 36th Avenue Southeast and continued all the way east to the city limits. We'll look at some trends along the corridor by collision type. We'll look at the most dangerous intersections by year, and we'll identify some takeaways from the collision analysis that I did prepare. So a little bit about ODOT. They're in the process of reconstructing Highway 9 right now. They're finished out to 108th. They've still got to go all the way to the city limits. They're doing a lot of safety upgrades as they progress down the corridor. They're doing things like yellow or centerline rumble strips on the yellow lines, edge line rumble strips on the white lines to prevent the yellow ones prevent the head-on, or try to prevent the head-on collisions. The ones on the white lines prevent somebody from running off the road and having an impact with something outside the clear zone. And that's been a good thing. There's some interesting things that we've heard about those lines. People that have cars that let you know when you're departing a lane don't necessarily like those rumble strips and think your car can kind of act funny. But I think once people get used to that, it'll be fine. It's just you kind of have to get used to that, especially with some older drivers, I think. They're doing a lot of grading as they go along the corridor trying to eliminate some steep vertical grades and horizontal grades that might exist, so to make it a more safe road that way. They are widening shoulders so that if somebody breaks down, they have a place to pull off to, or if there happens to be a collision, there's a place to pull off to investigate the collision too. So. We reached out to ODOT when we first, well, not when we first, but the last time I guess we heard about all the concern about safety on Highway 9 and asked about road safety audits. They can be very effective means of evaluating what's happening at an intersection, because it's not just one person looking at it, it's an entire group of people. A lot of stakeholders come together and look at all the collisions that have occurred, look at all the drop-offs that might exist along the road, things like that. If there's a steep hill or a sharp curve, they would identify things like that and make recommendations as to how you can improve. Initially, ODOT was a little resistant to preparing road safety audits on the roads that, the portion of Highway 9 that had already been improved, because they thought they were building in some safety concerns or some safety features that would address some of those concerns. But when we clearly show them that that wasn't the case, they sort of softened their stance, and they've agreed to do a road safety audit now. Originally, it was just gonna be at 48th Avenue, but I think, didn't we hear it was from 36 all the way to the city limits?
6 miles out.
So, yeah,
Well, you think it'd be good to follow, after you make an improvement project, that you follow up and want to see
yes.
what you did actually is working out. the way
Well,
you
and
thought.
I told them there's nothing wrong with doing it before you do your design too, because you might see something in the audit that
Yeah,
you might be able to account for in the design, so that's a work in progress. We'll keep pushing that information. Looking at the trends in total collisions from 2014 to 2024. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a benefit, but originally this was scheduled for December, the December meeting, and pushing it into this year allowed me to get all of 2024, not just had to cut it off at October or whenever I had to cut it off. But if you look at how total collisions on the corridor have trended since 2014, that red line is a trend line, so it's slightly decreasing. That's a good sign. Non-serious collisions, that's more of a level line. There's a slight decrease, but it's not as pronounced as it was in the total collisions. Again, you're not talking about quite as many collisions here either. Your peak is about 23 non-serious collisions for the whole corridor, 36th Avenue to the city limits. If we look at injury collisions, that's more of a sharp decrease. We got some outliers in 2021 that otherwise that line would be even more of a decline than it is. But that's a positive sign. But this is the one that's troubling, the fatal collisions, because that's clearly increasing. Now, 2022, we had 3. That's more than we've had any other year. So that's part of the reason why that trend line is increasing, but it's still a concern that we probably need to think about.
and improvements, the widening of Highway 9 from 24th to 72nd, where it is now, I think, started in 2018, 19, or in that era, 15 maybe?
Yeah, 15 probably.
And it's been ongoing since then.
Yes.
It's continuing.
And keep in mind that these graphs here they're not location specific, it's the whole corridor.
Just the whole corridor.
So they could be occurring on the portion that hasn't been improved yet. We'll kind of get to that as we get a little further into the presentation.
Councilor,
I was, similar question, I was just wondering what of these collisions maybe happened in construction areas as we go along, or if that was trackable.
It is trackable based on the diagram that was provided by the responding officer, and I'll be honest, I don't recall any that were in the construction zone. If there were, it was very, very small. So let's go year by year then. 2014, 108th Avenue Southeast had the most total collisions at 8. 48th Avenue Southeast had the most non-serious collisions at 3. 108th had the most injury collisions at 5. And 132nd and 108th tied with the most fatal collisions at 1. So.
And on the, so my count on the total fatal collisions on the corridor from 2014 to 2024 was, I think, 15 is what I counted. So would that probably be more fatalities on a single stretch of street than anywhere else in Norman? I mean, it's a long highway. so
It is a
it's
long highway. It's hard to say because
Like Robinson.
Highway
Main
9
Street.
arguably carries as much traffic or more traffic than any other road in Norman. It also operates at a higher speed, so both of those factors are gonna could make it skew that way.
So do you have the total volume count? I'm assuming that the car's increasing or way more than 24 than 14.
I could have collected that, but it's not in here, no.
And then
Thanks, though.
is
Good
there
question.
separate data for the section of Highway 9 from I-35 to 24th East? Where there's more traffic, it's more congested, there's more lights. More
also
traffic
lower-
lights and
it's also lower speed,
So there's
yeah.
probably fewer fatality crashes in that section, I would guess.
And I could have done that. I thought this was the focus of this was
Yeah.
from 36th east,
Yeah,
but,
for sure. That just.
but yes, I could definitely do that.
Anecdotal. Cause I know that's the section everybody complains about the most too, is I-35 to 24th, it's got so many stoplights. There's a lot of traffic, so it's congested, but it also may mean that there's less fatality crashes, injury crashes because of that, but yeah, definitely I think the focus has generally been the further you get out into the rural area, the more
Right.
dangerous it seems, at least anyway.
Yeah, well, you've also got a median, a pretty extensive median on that improved section towards I-35 that it's harder to cross over. What they're doing on Highway 9 to the east of 36th is they're doing essentially a 5-lane section, so it's at grade. The rumble strips help, but yeah, I think the perception is that because it's a direct shot over there, I can just drive across that lane and I'm in oncoming traffic all of a sudden.
To me, it would have been ideal if it was a divided highway all the way out instead of the 5 lanes, because I've noticed that 5th middle lane, when you go out there, is just completely full of debris.
Mhm.
And so I feel like you'd blow your tires up if you went into it anyway. But just in 2023, there being 2 head-on collisions, I guess, where maybe one was a medical incident, but people crossed over that.
Yes.
And
And these are all
Those could have
concerns
been
we raised to ODOT when they were going through the design, and we got nowhere with that.
so those were preventable, I would say, with the cable barrier or whatever it may have been. So anyway, yeah, thank you.
Did you have another question? Okay, so 2015, the locations changed. Some of the numbers didn't. 156th had the most total collisions at 8. 36th had the most non-serious collisions at 4. 156th had the most injury collisions at 5 and the most fatals at 1. 2016, 108th total collisions at 5. 60th had the most non-serious collisions at 4. Then we had a 4-way tie, 120th, 48th, 108th, and 72nd on injury collisions at 3, and 1 fatality collision at 156th. 2017, 72nd had 4 total collisions, 48th had 3 non-serious collisions, 72nd had 3 injury collisions, and there were no fatalities in 2017. 2018, 7 total collisions at 108th, 4 non-serious collisions at 84th, 4 injury collisions at 108th, and 1 fatal collision at 72nd and at 60th. 2019, 7 total collisions at 156th, 5 non-serious collisions at 156th, 3 injury collisions at 48th, and no fatalities. 2020, 4 total collisions at 72nd. And you can kind of see these numbers are dropping a little bit if you've kind of been watching some of those. 2 non-serious collisions at 80th, 84th, and at 108th. 2 injury collisions at 72nd, and 1 fatal collision at both 72nd and 120th. 2021, 7 total collisions at 108th. 3 non-serious collisions at both 156th and 36th, 5 injury collisions at 108th, and 1 fatality at 72nd. 2022, 6 total collisions at 72nd, 4 non-serious collisions at 156th, 5 injury collisions at 36th, and 1 fatality at 72nd, at Morning Glory Drive, and at 48th Avenue. 2023, 9 total collisions at 156th. And here the numbers are starting to go back up again, and that's post-COVID. That seemed to be an occurrence nationwide. So 9 total collisions at 156th, 5 non-serious collisions at 156th, 4 injury collisions at both 48th and 156th, and then 1 fatal collision at 108th and 1 at 120th. And lastly, 2024, 6 total collisions at 48th, 3 non-serious collisions at both 48th and 156th, 3 injury collisions at 48th, and 1 fatal collision at 60th. So what can we take away from all those numbers I just spewed out? Go ahead.
It seems like 48th is probably the most dangerous intersection I just
You're
over.
reading off the next slide, aren't you?
Oh, is it? Sorry, no.
No, you're fine.
But I don't know, I guess there's something that we can do before the road safety audit comes through. Is there anything that we can do to, I know that it's growing more out there. We have
Right.
lots of development going that way, and I'm sure people are coming up from Noble to get to Highway 9 and come back into town, so.
There are a couple of things I think we can do. We had talked with ODOT about the fact that if you're on Highway 9 approaching 48, there's a little bit of a crest of a hill right before you get there. So I'm not sure that people on 48th can see very far to the west.
If you're on 48th,
Yes,
facing north and looking west, I'm
Yes.
just looking at it on the map because, and I've been out there a few times, but if you're looking west, it's like the crest is
It's
right
right there.
there. And that's where the median ends. The divided median ends on the west leg of the intersection, and on the east leg of the intersection is where the 5-lane open median starts. And so
but we
I
had
see that.
approached ODOT about putting up another intersection advance warning sign on Highway 9, so you'd have one left and right side of the road. And the answer that I got was that yes, we can do that, but they've never done that. So I definitely can follow up on that. We had done an intersection evaluation out there at 48th and Highway 9. It's probably been 3 years ago, and we shared the results with ODOT. One of the things that it recommended, which not everybody's going to like, but it does warrant signalization right now. You know, you would never consider an all-way stop on a road like Highway 9. That would be very bad. It'd be bad enough to signalize it, but
Do a highway roundabout.
do a highway roundabout.
Make it
I
safer.
can pitch that, and we'll see if they
Make it
bite.
safer, just saying. It'd be a good spot to go.
Just put a ramp at the crest and just they can jump over the cars that are coming.
That would make
Can
it-
we just put a sign? Do we have the ability to just put one of our signs out there that says heads up?
Not without their permission.
How many fatalities do you need to get permission?
Well, and I know you're gonna
It's
go
just
over
who
the
owns and maintains the road.
36th Avenue being on there too, and it is signalized, so
Right.
it's like.
Yeah.
What, how much does that even, people are running the red light apparently.
True. So again, 48th Avenue, it showed up on 7 annual lists. Fortunately, that's one of the locations that ODOT has agreed to do a road safety audit. And you know, I apologize, but some of these things that I've put in here were before I knew that ODOT was gonna do the 6 miles to the east of 36, so. But 48th is definitely on that list. 36 showed up on 3 lists. And it's also in the footprint of the road safety audit that ODOT's gonna do. 156 showed up on 7 lists. We've known that location, because of the casino, because of the absentee Shawnee Tribe Clinic and other businesses to the north of the intersection, would be a future candidate for signalization. ODOT really needs to to kind of step up on their design of the widening that would go through 156th, is it time to install a signal there? There's just a lot of activity at that intersection. And it's in a curve too. It's not the easiest to see. 108th showed up on 6 annual lists, and it obviously needs to be monitored as we go forward post widening to see if 108th, that gets, the 6 miles gets to 108th, doesn't it?
Yes.
But only just barely, right?
Yep.
72nd showed up on 6 annual lists. It's gonna be in the road safety audit. 60th, the same thing. It showed up on 3 lists, but it's gonna be in that road safety audit. 120th showed up on 3 lists. It's not gonna be in the road safety audit, but it's something we need to look at as they widen the road out there.
All right.
Are there any questions about this information?
Well, it sounds like it's ongoing, so
Yeah.
I'll look forward to hearing an update next time there's one available. And I think we, council, we support anything that can be done to, I think those are those are preventable crashes, preventable deaths. It's something we can do something about, I think, so.
The exact point on that, is it a help for us as council members to advocate with ODOT for any of this stuff, or does that muddy the waters? I don't want to get anybody's way. I mean, if this is-
Yeah, I don't know that would help a whole lot. Do you?
I meet monthly with our
Okay.
district engineer, and I share with him every time our concerns on Highway 9.
They
Share
have
our-
this presentation too.
Okay,
Yeah, we
that's great.
forward this information to them. We are working with them closely, like David said, we will be a stakeholder in the reporting that's gonna be done and the audits that's being done. We have other corridors that I have to push forward too, that aren't just these.
Yeah.
But we stay in pretty constant contact. I don't know that necessarily direct contact with ODOT. But, I think there may be other avenues that we can maybe look at.
That's great.
If needed, we could do a resolution that says we support any
Just about
safety
saying the same thing.
improvements.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
Highway
whatever
9
we
just
can do
feels
to-
dangerous the entire way, even when you get on Highway 9 West to go out to Riverwind.
Yeah.
It's
Which is crazy for a highway with a 55-mile speed limit and stoplights.
Yeah.
I think you wouldn't be able to.
I know, they're not always go lights.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's more great.
I was just gonna say, I just remember from when the families of fatality victims showed up, their suggestions had been like a median cable divider.
And it's hard to put that in the 5-lane section that they've
It's
got,
all
because
concrete now.
that's right, that's gonna almost create more of a hazard than it's gonna prevent.
So this is what the rumble strips are about.
Yes.
I'll just say for one of them, it was a man had a heart attack and
Yeah.
went over. Not sure how much rumble strips will help that.
No,
but-
I know. And the other thing is that when there's breaks in the median, you have an opportunity to get across. Of course, you would with cable barrier as well, so.
Right.
And that's part of the problem that we see too, is that there are so many people that have direct access to Highway 9 throughout the entire corridor. So you start doing breaks and it creates different hazards. And so you can't have the long run that is really what cable barriers are best at. It gets broken up into pieces. So you also have to think about, we can't, how many people's access are we willing to remove from Highway 9?
I mean, I-35 to 48th is with the divided grass median is, I think, the ideal section, the way they should do it. And then that grass median, you could put the cable barrier if they have to.
Exactly.
But it feels like the Indy 500, no matter which way you're going. Like,
I know. So, okay, any other comments, questions about Highway 9? All right, so James Garner and Flood to Acres.
Okay, so looking at collisions that occurred there, one property, this is between Flood and Acres, or I'm sorry, James Gardner from Flood to Acres. One property damage only collision at Flood, and that was at the roundabout. One property damage only collision between Flood and Acres where a vehicle struck an OG&E pole. That's actually happened since I wrote this. Again, the same pole got hit.
I will just say one of the regrets I may have about that project is that we weren't able to or didn't bury all the utility lines. So I feel like it was a missed. I don't know why I didn't even think about it on that project.
Well, I can't speak for the people that are hitting these poles, but I think if the pole wasn't there, they'd find something else to
Right.
hit. I definitely know
Yeah.
that there was alcohol involved in the second collision. I don't know about the first collision. I don't remember about the first collision. But yeah, it got,
Drinking will do that.
ironically, in the summary that the officer put in the first time that pole was hit, the driver claimed that he didn't know the road curved.
Coming from,
He's going northbound towards
Okay.
Flood.
okay,
He didn't know that the road curved to get to the roundabout. He, for some reason, thought it went straight, so he hopped the curb and hit the pole. I'm thinking, there's lights all around that roundabout. There's that sculpture in the roundabout that has lights on it. How do you not
Need to
know
paint
that
the
the road?
curves yellow or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
gosh.
I'll put the arrow signs.
There's certain things you just can't design for.
right.
Yeah, you really can't.
Now, we are seriously considering putting some type of sign, whether it's an object marker or what it might be on that utility pole. Because that's crazy that it's been hit twice in, how long has the road been open? 8 months?
And could you just paint the curbs yellow or something like fire zone?
He certainly could paint curbs yellow. My guys would run me out of town on a rail if I said we're gonna paint any more curbs.
But I mean,
yeah,
like
we
the-
could do something like
The
that.
yield signs have made a difference after
Yes.
those were installed, and people seem to
Well,
understand.
and,
this
you know,
stop.
a nice size object marker that would show somebody, hey, you're about to hit something.
Yeah, turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can put some choice words on the pavement so they understand it means it applies to them.
Look up.
Make it an artful inlet project or something.
Good, actually.
And then at the intersection at Acres itself, 3 property damage only collisions and 1 injury collision. Traffic volumes on James Garner between Flood and Acres, we counted this in September of 2024 because we got requests about why is the speed so low? It's hard to drive 25 on that road.
Right. Yeah.
So we did those counts in 2024. We had an ADT of 4,244. At the same location in January of this year, 5,651. So it is definitely increasing. 33% increase from September 2024 to January 2025.
Okay.
So we continue to get complaints. Excuse me, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt
No,
you.
please.
We continue to get complaints about the Acres intersection with James Garner.
It's a little bit.
People want
tricky.
it to be an all-way stop, and I'm sorry, we cannot make it an all-way stop because then we're encouraging people to stop on the tracks if they're westbound on Acres, just as they were at Jones before the James Garner extension was added. You know,
Seems like it'd be a good spot for a roundabout to keep the flow going.
do you think? Yeah, I think, Scott and I have talked about this numerous times. I think it makes, you could actually do the same thing on the Jones side. You could go down to Eufaula and do the same thing with those 2 intersections that are gonna have the same situation where north and south has to stop because east and west can't stop because of the railroad crossing.
Yeah. And
So
just
there's
allow-
room to do these.
Allow that continuous flow.
Yeah.
Not have to put another traffic light up, and then you're stuck in another red light for however long.
Well, and again, this one does not really accommodate a stop or a traffic signal because of the fact that that is gonna put people stopping on the railroad tracks.
Right.
So any kind of a stop control on Acres is problematic.
So are we able to do traffic control at Gray and Main on James Garner because they're so close to the track and it?
Well, I mean, I don't wanna correct Scott, but you
could, you're
you
right.
can install a traffic signal at a location like this because the signal is gonna be connected to the
To the
railroad crossing,
rock crossing.
just like we have at Rock Creek Road right now. Anytime a train is approaching, it sends a signal to our controller to go through what we call a preemption sequence. It will clear traffic off the tracks and then hold it green for Flood Avenue. It would do the same thing here. It would hold traffic green for James Garner.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
Yeah, that's all right.
But that comes at a fairly significant cost, because we're having to put that in with James Garner at Main Street. And right now, it already has some of the correct equipment there, but we're looking at adding $500,000 to that project just to accommodate what would be needed for the railroad.
Yeah.
And on that one, they're putting a small portion in, but that really falls to us and is increasing our project cost, which was an unanticipated cost of the project.
Well, I remember that being a discussion way back, that the two-way conversions, one of the biggest costs would be the railroad crossings
Yes.
and having to do
additional
both
gates.
sides and, yeah,
Yep.
all that, so. Did you have Councilmember Grant?
Yeah, I was curious, so how much does a roundabout go for?
I don't know that we put a price tag on this one.
No, but this would be a fairly expensive, project. And I mean, this is kind of, Dave has done a good job of putting this on here. We'd have to sit down and actually have it designed to look at some of
Yeah,
the.
this, don't take this as a design.
This
I
is
don't
just
think it would be that big of a rate.
We just talked about, could it be done?
Yeah.
And David was, accommodated that. But, you're having to close down both roadways to do it potentially. I mean, there's a lot that goes on there.
It's
But I
not,
would anticipate that this would be a $500,000 if we were lucky.
Probably, I was gonna say 6 or 7, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because this is a different design than what we've, I mean, typically we can show that the cost of doing a roundabout is pretty similar to doing a signalized intersection. The signals have gotten so expensive now that may be reversing. But this would be a pretty extensive project.
And then their roundabouts, less maintenance, less cost over time than the traffic signals to maintain, and electricity and.
No average draw, yeah.
well, yeah, obviously it makes the most sense over there. I do get complaints about that, and so,
I mean, my favorite complaint honestly was, why don't you put up the cross traffic does not stop signs? It's like, you mean the ones that are already there? Cause we did that the first day it opened. We knew that was gonna be a
Well,
concern.
I heard about that too. But I would just say for flow, cause what I hear most these days is that it's hard to make that left turn if you're coming from James Garner to Acres.
To go
So,
east.
and there's a lot of people coming home from work that wanna make that left.
Understood.
Councilmember Peacock?
Yeah, I think given the choice of a roundabout or a signal, I mean, roundabout, and really it's because James Garner was intended to be this zero stop,
Yes.
I don't wanna say a bypass, but a thoroughfare from, North Norman all the way to the core. And if you put a stoplight here, you get almost to the core, and then you're just jammed up with traffic. And I think, that just kind of goes against the intention, so.
All right.
Awesome.
Any further comments, questions about James Garner Boulevard? Well,
Just can't wait to see this start
it's
construction.
helpful to know after 6 months or so of it being open, a little bit more than that maybe, but and I mean, I use it all the time. It's saved me so much time. I used it today coming back to Norman to City Hall from the city. And just as I'm going over Robinson, all I can think about is I'm not having to wait at that red light anymore to get into central Norman, and that I can get out. I mean, from where I live over by the stadium on the Duck Pond campus, going north on Jenkins all the way to James Garner and all the way up to Flood and out I-35 is many times the day faster than going west on Lindsay Street all the way to I-35 and then going north on I-35. So just it's made a world of difference for me. I've heard a lot of feedback, positive feedback from other people that have been using it, and I've noticed more and more people seem to be driving on it as the numbers show.
Yeah.
So.
It also seems like as people are adjusting to it, I drive it every day too. Many of our staff drive it every day, so we're all monitoring it. And it feels like people are starting to realize who has stop and who doesn't. I mean, so those first couple of months, you're just pretty shaky.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's improving with time, just like the use of the roundabout continues to improve. We want to continue to monitor it. I think that we'll show that in another 6 months, it feels like the traffic is picking up every few weeks. I feel like there's, I'm sitting in a little bit longer line, or there's more people around me. So it's been a very successful project.
I would think most people, once they go through it a couple times and realize they're not having to wait at a stoplight or come to a complete stop at a stop sign, and they're able to just get through there, I mean, I feel like that's a seller,
You know,
so,
it's gonna be the case study for all future roundabouts in Norman.
okay.
And as, you know, as you heard the other night, we've actually, in the new comprehensive transportation plan, put criteria in for being able to evaluate, so we have a consistent way that we can evaluate those and look at them and be very objective instead of subjective with their use and make better decision-making in the future. So we're excited about having that tool.
And we put this intersection through that tool and it scored well too, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, any final comment, questions?
You guys keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. And that concludes our agenda for this committee meeting, and so if there's no final